Okay, so Baby, well, her real name is Frances, but everybody calls her Baby, and she and her sister and her mom and Jerry Orbach go to a summer camp in 1963. Her sister immediately gets all flirty with a waiter, but Baby just wants to explore, so she carries a watermelon and sees Johnny and gets nervous and says, I carried a watermelon, and she watches him dance with Penny and assumes that they're boyfriend-girlfriend, but they're really just BFFs, so she dances with Johnny. Then Penny has a health issue and can't dance in the big dances that they get all their summer money from, so they ask Baby to fill in, even though there's a whole summer camp staff full of dance instructors and Baby has zero training or experience, but whatever, they ask her anyway. They practice a lot and she eventually learns, but she wears way too much makeup to these dances and she's really bad at getting lifted over his head. Then Penny's really sick and Baby goes to get Jerry Orbach to help, but he's mad about the makeup and he's right because it's too much. Then she and Johnny fall in love, but Jerry Orbach says no because he thinks Johnny's the one who made Penny sick when really it was that waiter that the sister was flirting with earlier. Then it's time for the big talent show and Baby's sister is really bad, but we give her an A for effort, I guess. And everybody sings join hands and hearts and voices, but then Johnny shows up and he says nobody puts Baby in a corner and takes her on stage and plays I Had the Time of My Life on the record player, and they do a heck of a dance and she finally does the lift and everybody's happy about that. Then somehow the orchestra knows how to play the song even though they've never heard it before, and Jerry Orbach dances, and Penny's healthy again and dances with the orchestra leader, but this woman who also liked Johnny is mad and just walks out. And that's Dirty Dancing. Okay, buckle up. So this guy Malcolm, but we'll just call him Bruce. Bruce is a child psychologist, and Donnie Wahlberg is one of his patients and has a breakdown and shoots him. So that's how it starts. And Bruce becomes kind of obsessed with Donnie Wahlberg and is always listening back to the recordings of their old sessions. And he thinks his wife is having an affair because all he does is sit there and listen to tapes in the basement. And then he starts having sessions with this cute little kid named Cole who's getting in trouble at school for being a weird kid, and his mom is worried because she thinks he's opening all the cupboards and drawers and stealing her pin that her mom gave her, but really he's not. Then Cole goes to a birthday party with this just awful kid who thinks he's awesome just because he said, Mommy, Daddy, my throat hurts in a cough syrup commercial once, and he said it just like that too. It wasn't even good. And he's a bully and shoves Cole into this scary thing in the wall, like a little room or something, and Cole freaks out, and these little a-holes won't let him out, but his mom comes along and saves him and has to take him to the hospital because he's covered in owies. And Bruce comes to visit Cole in the hospital where he finally tells his secret and says, I see dead people. And Bruce doesn't believe him at first, but then he goes back to listen to those old Donnie Wahlberg tapes again, and he turns the sound way up and realizes that Donnie Wahlberg could see dead people too. And now we start to see the ghosts that Cole can see. Then Bruce takes him out to this little girl's funeral way out in the middle of somewhere, and he follows the directions the ghost girl gave him to prove to her father that her mother was poisoning her because she had like Munchausen by proxy or something. So that was like, whoa. Then Cole's in the car with his mom and tries to tell her the secret, but she doesn't believe him. And then he says that he sees Grandma and tells her warm, fuzzy stuff that Ghost Grandma says. Then Bruce comes home and finds his wife had fallen asleep watching their wedding video, and she drops his wedding ring on the floor, and he's like, well, why isn't it on my finger? And then it finally hits him, oh, I've been dead the whole time. I was one of the ghost people. But that also means that that little kid was alone a lot, because I don't think a ghost counts as adult supervision no matter what it does for a living. And that's it. That's the Sixth Sense. Okay. So, Clarice is an FBI agent, and through the whole movie, nobody can get over it. They're like, a lady FBI agent, what? And she's helping to investigate what happened to these women with butterflies in their mouths, but they're having trouble figuring out who done it. So she goes to see the expert, Hannibal Lecter. And he really likes her and tells her all kinds of useful things, but only if she'll tell him stories about sheep, because he likes to hear about sheep, and he likes beans. And because he's helping, they give him a nicer place to live, but when they're on their way to his new place, he escapes by pretending to be the guard. And then we meet the butterfly man who likes playing dress-up, and has a little dog, and has a lady in his basement, and he says, it puts the lotion in the basket. You know, like when you go to Walgreens and you put the lotion in your basket. And she threatens to hurt his little dog, and that makes him mad. But Clarice shows up and wears these super cool night vision goggles and catches him and frees the lady, who ends up adopting the dog at the end, I think. I don't actually remember. Then Hannibal calls Clarice from South America and says, congratulations, see you soon. And then he goes out to dinner. And that's The Silence of the Lambs. Okay, so, you probably didn't think I was really gonna do this one, but here we are. Okay, so, Ellen Burstyn lives alone and likes watching game shows, and then she finds out she's gonna be on a game show, so she decides to go on a diet, and goes to a special diet doctor who gives her pills that make her peppy during the day and sleepy at night. But her son Harry keeps stealing her TV because he has to give himself special shots every day, and his special shots are expensive. So Ellen Burstyn has to go to the pawn shop to buy her TV back over and over. Harry's girlfriend also needs special shots, and when they need money to buy the special medicine, she goes to work as a kind of an entertainer of sorts. But eventually their special shot medicine runs out, and none of the pharmacies seem to have it, so Harry's girlfriend entertains an even larger audience while Harry and his friend drive to Miami, and Harry's arm falls off. Meanwhile, Ellen Burstyn takes too many of the peppy daytime pills and has to go somewhere to rest for a little while. They give her brain some nice electricity to make it feel better, like when you rub your feet on the carpet and touch something, but they maybe rub their feet on the carpet a smidge too much, so she goes to her happy place and stays there forever. And that's all. That's Requiem for a Dream. Okay, so, these four guys decide to go for a walk. And one of them plays the banjo. And... What? What's happening? What just happened?
No, baby boo, you're not doing Deliverance.
Well, who asked you?
I'm putting my foot down.
I'm Veronica, and I'm putting my foot down. Okay, so, this lady Marion is in love, which means she embezzles $40,000 cash from her work, which is $300,000 in today's money. She takes off on the highway, and she knows they're going to find out, so she stops off for an emergency car trade-in, and everyone's like, that's super sus. But they put a pin in it, and she drives away. Embezzling really takes it out of you, so she stops off for a rest at the Bates Motel where she meets Norman. Norman is an aspiring taxidermist, and that is the least weird thing about him. He tells her his mom is a crazy MILF, and for some reason that makes Marion decide to go back tomorrow and return the money. She celebrates with a nice hot shower, but like they say, the bathroom is the most dangerous room in the house. And one thing leads to another, and Norman's in the room like, Mom! Anyway, rather than go the taxidermy route, Norman puts her and all her things in the car and sinks it. And you're like, Norman, no, there's $300,000 in there. Anyway, people are still really mad about the money, so they come poking around. And the Bates family does not like people poking around, so they do their thing. Then Marion's sister and boyfriend show up looking for everybody, and the sister meets Norman's mother and screams, Norman is not good at taxidermy! And Norman puts his dress on over his pants. Why? I mean, look at it. Seriously, look at it. Though I do believe that very dress is available at Target right now. Anywho, the boyfriend stops him and he gets arrested, and it turns out he was his own mother the whole time, and he has to go somewhere to rest for a little while. And that's it. That's not Deliverance. Okay, so, Jack and Wendy and their little kid Danny go to babysit a hotel for the winter because the guy who did it last year became a family annihilator. But when Jack hears about that, he's like, nah, it's probably fine. Then the chef tells Danny, you're shiny like me, see ya. So they live in the hotel with a bunch of ghosties, including the daughters of the last guy who really want to play with Danny. Meanwhile, Jack is writing a novel about some boring kid also named Jack, and Wendy's doing whatever it is women did in movies in the 70s. But when Wendy finds out he's writing about some dumb boring kid, she whacks him with a baseball bat and goes off to pout in a room, where Danny's all like, red rum, red rum. Then Jack says, here's Johnny, and she stabs him while Danny jumps out the window into the snowstorm. Luckily, he'd been getting all shiny with the chef, who pulls up in a Zamboni or something and dies. So Wendy and Danny have to drive the Zamboni through the storm, but they forget Jack, so he freezes to death in this elaborate hedge maze. And then it's got one of those, why, there hasn't been a hotel here in 50 years kind of endings. I mean, it's not that, but it might as well be, because I guess Jack's been haunting that hotel for like 100 years, or maybe it's a time travel thing, or ghosts suck you into the photo or something. I don't know. I didn't really get it. And that's The Shining. So, these three college kids, well, they're film students, or one of them is, so the whole movie looks like this. Anyway, they hear spooky stories about the Blair Witch, so they go into the woods to find the Blair Witch, and then they spend the rest of the movie crying and complaining about finding the Blair Witch. That's what you went into the woods for. What'd you expect? Then one of them stands in a corner or something, and that's the end of the movie. Okay, so, Gary Sinise is John Malkovich's big brother, even though he's smaller, and they're not really brothers, but they both like to talk about bunnies, so they're bros. John Malkovich has a severe form of cute aggression. He likes to carry dead mouses in his pocket, which I have to admit I kind of get, but he likes them because they're soft, so he cuddles them to death. Cute aggression. So they walk to a farm and they become farm workers, and John Malkovich meets a puppy, and it's so cute that he cuddles it to death. Then the farmer's wife walks into the barn, and guess what? She's soft and cute. So guess what? Yep, you guessed what. So an angry mob forms, and Gary Sinise takes John Malkovich to the river to talk about bunnies. And Gary Sinise does a mouse, puppy, farmer's wife kind of job on John Malkovich so that the angry mob won't get to him first. And that's about it. But now you know why cats kill little things. We have cute aggression, just like John Malkovich. Oh, P.S. Veronica says this is also a book, so if you want to sound smart, say you read the book. Okay, so, Forrest isn't good in school, and so his mom gets really polite with the principal, and he gets to stay in school. Then it turns out he can run real fast, so he gets to go to college. And he's in love with Jenny, but she's not in love with him. And he joins the army and meets Bubba, but Bubba dies, and his other friend, Lieutenant Dan, gets his legs blown off. Then he sees Jenny again, but things go wrong, and he says, "Sorry, I ruined your Black Panther party." And then he goes off, and he does everything. Jenny does everything, too, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, he met all the presidents, mows a football field, invents the smiley face, coins the phrase bleep happens, and takes a long walk and becomes a millionaire and a strip boat captain. Then Jenny shows up and stays a few days, and on the last day, she gets very polite with him. And the next time he sees her, she has that kid from The Sixth Sense. Oh, and now she's sick from something. And oh, now she wants to marry him, now that she's sick and dying. Oh, that's convenient for everyone, isn't it? Jenny. Anyway, they get married and she dies, and the kid from The Sixth Sense starts kindergarten, and we're left with a cliffhanger about whether Forrest is going to get polite with any school principals. And that's it. I can't decide if I like it or not. I mean, honestly, I could have recapped it by saying this kid gets born in Alabama and then a bunch of bleep happens. You know. Okay, so, Tom Hanks works a lot, and he hardly ever sees his girlfriend Kelly, but they're gonna get married someday. But Tom Hanks knows that the most important package is yours, and he also knows the way the world works, so to be absolutely sure, he travels all over the world to make sure it's on time. See what I'm doing there with the FedEx slogans? Anyway, he's flying back from Malaysia on a FedEx plane because he absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. And the plane ride gets bumpy, but he's like, relax, it's FedEx. But nope, it's a plane crash, and everybody dies, except him. And he washes up on an island with a volleyball named Wilson, and they become friends, and he's proud of himself for learning to start a fire. And I think he's got some packing tape, but it doesn't last very long. So this goes on for 4 years. I don't know how long he was on the island, but the movie itself is 4 years long. So make sure you have lots of vacation time stored up and talk to your boss before you start watching it. Anyway, now he's tan and he has long hair and a beard and lives in a cave, so kind of like Kim Kardashian. Yeah, that's what you get, Kim. I had a meaner joke in here earlier, so you're lucky. And he throws an effigy of himself off a mountain, and he's good at hunting fish. Respect. But then a porta potty washes up, and he and Wilson sail away in the porta potty. But Wilson accidentally floats off and dies of exposure. And Tom Hanks is like, "Wilson, I'm sorry." Then a big old boat goes by and rescues him. But when he gets back, he finds out Kelly got married to Detective Mike Logan from Law and Order. And she can't just leave him to marry Tom Hanks because they have some stupid baby or something. So she says, "Here, have this Jeep instead." And he drives the Jeep and returns a package from an Etsy shop, and that's it. And if you think this recap was long, you should see the movie. Okay, so, this guy whose name I forget ignores all the warnings about driving in bad weather and crashes his car in the snow. Annie comes and rescues him and lets him stay at her place. He writes books, and she really likes his books, and she's mad that he killed off her favorite character, so she says he has to stay until he writes a new book that brings her favorite character back. She's like, "Did you ever see Dallas? Could you just do like a Patrick Duffy sort of thing?" So one day he goes snooping and finds out a second thing about her. She really doesn't like babies. But the court was like, that's okay, because lots of people don't like babies, because they're annoying. But next time, try not to work at a baby hospital, because that's where they tend to keep the babies. She's mad that he was snooping around in her business, so she goes all Office Space on his ankles, which is fine, because as hostages go, he's difficult. Then the sheriff comes snooping around, and she shoots him, and I don't remember what happens with that, but apparently she gets away with it, I guess. Anyway, the guy finishes the book, and she's happy. But instead of being gracious about it, he sets the book on fire, and they get into a fight, and he wins the fight, and gets to leave, and Rob Reiner flies a helicopter at some point. And the moral of the story is, don't drive in bad weather. Your meteorologist loves you, and wants you to be safe. Okay, so, don't worry. So this old priest, Father Marin, goes to Iraq for an archaeological dig and finds this medallion and statue that make these two doggos start fighting. And then Ellen Burstyn is this beautiful actress recently divorced with a tween daughter Reagan, but not named after the president. And they're in D.C. shooting a movie directed by this older Hollywood-type director. And her daughter meets Captain Howdy, which is the creepiest name ever invented, in a Ouija board, and then starts acting funny, but her mom doesn't connect the two, even though Captain Howdy would sure make my ears perk up. So yeah, in the meantime, there's this priest, Father Karras, who's also a psychiatrist, and he notices a lot of priests are questioning their faith, and he is too, because he wasn't there when his mother died, and he just feels like a failure. And he's best friends with a fancier priest who hobnobs with the Hollywood type, so he'll definitely be a bishop someday. And the fancier priest goes to a party at Ellen Burstyn's house, and while he's playing the piano and feeling very good about being the center of attention around these famous Hollywood people, Regan comes in and says, "Ha, I'll see your piano show tunes and raise you a pee on the rug." She actually does pee all over the rug. Then Ellen Burstyn lets the old Hollywood director babysit, creepy, and then Reagan kills him by throwing him out a window. Bet you weren't expecting that. And her behavior just gets worse from there, so Ellen Burstyn takes her to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrists are like, "Oh, maybe it's just the divorce." And Captain Who? And they think that she's probably going to be fine, but Ellen Burstyn gets really frustrated after Reagan clocks her right in the eye and calls her for some very bad names. So she goes incognito to Father Karras and asks him to do an exorcism. And he's like, "Whoa, hold the phone, that's a big ask." So he goes to see Reagan, and he's like, "Oh, it's probably just the divorce." And Captain Who? And she can speak Latin backwards, which impresses him, but then she claims to be possessed by the devil himself, and he's like, "Nah, hell ain't sending their top guy for this job." But Ellen Burstyn is very upset, and she's so pretty that he eventually asks his bosses if he can do the exorcism, and they say okay, but only if this old priest, Father Marin, the one who unleashed the thing to begin with, if you ask me, because he was digging where he shouldn't have been, supervises. So they do the exorcism, and the thing living in Reagan twists her head and pukes a little and levitates and says some really mean "your mama" jokes, and everyone's feelings get hurt, so Marin kicks Karras out of the room and then immediately drops dead of a heart attack, so Karras has to go all in to finish the thing, and he tricks it into leaving Reagan and possessing him instead, at which point he flings himself out the same murder window to protect everyone else from the demon thing. I guess the idea is that the demon died with him, but I think it's still lurking around somewhere because there's a sequel. And I never trusted that hobnobbing priest who gave him the last rites. Somebody better keep their eye on him. And that's it. That's The Exorcist. See, it wasn't that scary. You're fine. You did great.